Hey guys, Mike with Caveman, and in this video, we are going to go into some kind of nerdy stuff. We're going to go deep into heat propagation in your firearm, some thermodynamics, and the role that our bacon wrap plays in that whole process. You can know what to expect when you order your bacon wrap, and you have a sure understanding of how it's going to perform on your firearm. I'm going to go ahead and apologize now because some of this information might be kind of stale to a lot of you as we go really into the weeds about how heat works throughout your firearm. But if you're into that stuff, you're definitely going to want to check this out. I'm going to go through a bunch of the different variables that you need to consider when it comes to heat. When we are talking about heat in your firearm, there are a number of different ways that you should be concerned about heat in your firearm. In this specific instance, we are going to be talking about the heat that comes off your barrel enough that can interfere with your grip, of the handguard. Some of you may have never experienced this. In fact, there are plenty of platforms where you're not shooting enough or it's able to evacuate the heat quickly enough that getting the handguard so hot that your hand becomes uncomfortable or unsafe isn't even really a concern. If that's the case, there are a lot of other features of the bacon wrap that can help you in your shooting. There's a little bit of something for everyone in that regard. But there are a lot of platforms, especially if you're doing a lot of shooting, where it actually can get so hot that you don't really want to hold on to that. Now, obviously, the primary way that this happens is because you are shooting a lot and you're doing a lot of that shooting in a short period of time. Now, on one day, that may not be a problem because of the ambient temperature, because the wind is pulling the heat away from your barrel fast enough where that's not a big deal. Other days, you might be in Arizona in July going shooting and it's 100 million degrees outside and this is already too hot to grab before you've even picked it up. So those are just a couple of variables that come into play when it comes to heating your firearm. And not only that, how it affects you. I mean, the color of your handguard sitting in the sun can make a big difference as well. So there's a lot of different things that come into play. When we are thinking about the bacon wrap, we wanted to consider those things. And because on any given day, even on the same rig, heat may propagate through your firearm differently. Sometimes when you're shooting, you may not have any heat issues at all. It may be perfectly comfortable to handle, even if you're doing a lot of coursework and doing a lot of firing because of those environmental variables. Other days, like I mentioned, it may be really uncomfortable before you've even fired anything. And so one of the features in the bacon wrap is something that you might be familiar with us, with Caveman, with products we've had in the past, and that is thermochromics. Now, the thermochromics we have in our bacon wrap are very different than the thermochromics we have for our spark lineup and our flare lineup and the smoke lineup, because those are all meant to transition when the surface of your barrel or your suppressor is no longer safe to handle or store. We're doing something a little bit differently here because you are not directly holding on to potentially your barrel, which you shouldn't do anyway, but that's why we make products, because you can't fix stupid, but our stuff helps. You're actually grabbing on your handguard. Some handguards are very low profile. That is, the space between your barrel and the handguard is very thin, meaning the heat coming off the barrel can get into your handguard very quickly or come through your handguard. Other systems, you may have a much larger handguard with a pencil barrel, so there's a lot bigger of an air gap and it's never an issue. But with our thermochromics, what we've done is made it so that when this outside face, so not the barrel face, when this outside face has become too hot to safely handle specifically with your bare hands. But because you're grabbing silicone, you're not grabbing metal directly, it's a little bit different. We actually have it set to a higher temperature. Our other products are 130 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because that's when metal gets too hot to safely handle or store. Because if you get above 130 degrees, the metal can transfer the heat into your skin faster than your brain can process that you're touching something too hot. But we're not touching metal in this case, we're touching silicone. And different materials let go of their heat at different rates. In this case, silicone lets go of its heat a lot slower than metal does. And so the transition temperature is much higher. It's actually at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So about 20 degrees higher, or 65-ish Celsius, plus or minus a couple degrees. And that's even to indicate just, hey, you reach the point that you're probably going to be getting uncomfortable. People like me might want to move their hand right away. I don't have very calloused hands. They are not very manly in that regard. But other people, when that transition happens, they still may feel comfortable holding on to the handguard exactly where it's at. So again, a little bit different for everybody, but we wanted to provide some indicator to let you know when that heat has propagated through our bacon wrap, so that if you need to switch over to gloves, it gives you a clear indicator that it's time to do that. Or the other aspect of that is, and hopefully I'll be showing some B-roll here of the color transition, but it will show you where you then hand place your hand. So if you're deep in a competition or something, and this is just getting too hot because the heat has finally soaked through, well, let me show you a spot that you can adjust to and just continue on moving. Now, I've said heat soak a couple times in my initial video. I talked about heat soak a little bit, and so let's go into that. So what is heat soak? Heat doesn't generally hit a barrier and then just stop. It's going to try to move through that barrier because heat wants to go from, it wants to be balanced, right? It wants to go from a high point of heat to a low point of heat. And it wants to balance that out. That's why, you know, if you were to shoot and get your barrel really hot and then you just set it down, the components around it will start warming up as that heat propagates to those other components to try to level out until eventually it balances out with the ambient temperature over time. So, handguard protectors. There are a lot out there. They all have slightly different materials and do different things, but every single one of them suffers from heat soak to some degree. Now, some of them may have a material that is so robust that it can, it's called a thermal capacity. It can hold on to a lot of heat before transferring through to the outer materials. And some of them are a lot more simple, where it's just a simple barrier to delay the time it takes for that heat to get through to your hand. Here's what that means. It means every handguard protector, every handguard heat protector is going to perform differently on different platforms on any given day. Some days, those other handguard protectors may suffer from heat soak really quick, and the outside of that handguard protector, just like ours, can still get uncomfortable. There are other ones that maybe they are so thick, or the platform that they are on just isn't putting out a lot of heat, that it may seem like an absolute miracle that these handguard protectors completely and absolutely protect your hand from anything that comes off the handguard, entirely. I think you get the point I'm trying to say. And that's just not the case. It all depends on how much heat you're putting out, how fast you're putting out that heat, how quickly that heat can be dissipated either from external factors or just from not shooting, and if there has been enough heat and enough time to soak through the material that you are using. So I am not going to sit here and tell you that this is some magical device that will block all heat and it'll never reach your hand. It absolutely can. The difference between our product and other products on the market is ours tells you about it. So if that heat does come through, then that is the indicator saying either A, use gloves if you're going to maintain that same grip, B, let me show you where you still can grip safely and not be uncomfortable, or C, just so you know, if you're going to hold on to this place continually, it's going to just continue to get hotter. So that is what the thermochromic property in our bacon wrap is primarily for. So again, different than our other products because it's telling you the actual temperature of the silicone itself, which is the surface you're holding on to, not any bare metal items. And so that's what that's for. The funny thing about heat is you can't really see it, aside from perhaps a mirage effect. But our products, their whole point is to visualize that when it makes sense. We actually have, I think it's an Amazon review where someone complained that it didn't change color. And they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And it's hard to explain to those people, no, it did exactly its job. You just didn't get your platform hot enough on that day for it to change color. They might go out on a different day and maybe gets heat soaked to 115 degrees in the sun, and after a couple shots, it does change color. And so even at rest, our products are giving you live data. They're saying, hey, this is still safe enough to handle. The bacon wrap is saying, hey, this is still safe enough to grip. Our spark crush washers and our flares, if they don't change color, even at rest, you're getting data saying, hey, this is still safe to handle. It doesn't matter if you did 100 shots on 22. If it didn't change color, you don't have to worry about it. You're good to go. So it's something that is always going to be a battle, teaching people about heat and how it can be so different on the same platform with just a few variables change. So I'm glad I got to take a moment here to explain that to all of our smart customers out there who understand heat a little bit better and don't have to have me explain to them why sometimes things do get hot and sometimes things don't get hot. I touched on this briefly in my last video about heat and airflow coming through when you have a bacon wrap installed. And there's been some questions on Reddit. It is a super valid question, and so we're going to go over that now. So what is the concern? Anytime you cover up something that is putting off heat, you are trapping in that heat. If you have a suppressor wrap to protect you from the heat, and this is the great irony of any sort of heat protection device, is in protecting that heat, it is creating more heat to protect you from. So it's this weird balancing game. And so, does the bacon wrap enclose the heat, and can it make things heat up faster? Absolutely. I'm not going to tell you it's not. Anything that covers it up is going to do that. But here's a couple things to consider. First of all, how much heat are we talking about? Because let's go back to this handguard over here. This one is primarily covered up. I have it covered up all the way to the base, so there's no real airflow coming through the back, and all the air has to come out the front. When I'm shooting this, I never get the color to change on this platform. I'm not shooting enough, and so yeah, it's not an issue. So am I containing extra heat? Absolutely. Is it enough to matter? Absolutely not. Not on this platform. I have a clear indicator that even though there's going to be extra heat built up in here, it's not even so much that it's building up to the point where the handguard protector is changing color. Now, on other platforms, that very much may be a concern for you. It's already getting too hot for you to handle. That's why you wanted to get a heat guard protector in the first place, and now you're concerned about any excess heat buildup. When we're talking about heat buildup, especially on the barrel, barrels in general can handle a lot of heat when compared to what your average shooter at the range is going to be putting out. Is it going to take it from 200 degrees to 250 degrees inside, so it's adding 50 degrees? Is it taking it 200 to 300? 200 to 350 degrees are now trapped inside of there. Generally speaking, even though those are numbers that can burn you, that's not something to really be concerned about. But if you are worried, the bacon wrap allows for this, and this is another feature that differentiates us from other handguard options on the market. Other ones are pre-cut, they're pre-stitched, they're fit for a very specific size, often 6 inches to 8 inches, and sometimes they have an M-lock cutout for a single device, and that's what you get. So if on your setup, that ends up being too much coverage to build up heat where you're no longer comfortable with it, I don't know what you do. Get rid of it, deal with it, I don't know. But with ours, you can opt to just wrap the parts where you're going to be grabbing the most. So this is a good example of where if I'm grabbing here, this is where I'm always going to be grabbing. If I'm perching on an obstacle, I'm perching it right here. I don't need any coverage back here because I'm never going to be coming back here. So there's a couple things. A, as you can see, it gives you that airflow. We now have openings in the back, so that's more space for heat to propagate outwards and allow the heat to escape. If there's a breeze coming through, it also has an entry point and an exit point, or vice versa. What it also does is it doubles up your bacon wrap. And if you double the protection, if you double the layers, you're going to get more protection. So it's going to take longer for that platform to propagate through to the point where you're now uncomfortable. And so I think you guys are starting to pick up on the whole point of our bacon wrap, and that is versatility. That is using it in whatever manner makes most sense for your platform. You might not want this entire long thing, and you might want to just cut it down so you don't have to worry about extra weight. You don't have to worry about the extra bulk of wrapping over on itself. Whatever it is that you think makes the most sense for what you're running, that's what the bacon wrap is for. It is merely a platform. It is merely a tool. It is like a Swiss Army knife. There might be 2 features of that Swiss Army knife that you use all the time, but there are still these other things on there should you ever find that you need those things. So that is heat in a nutshell. I could go into this over and over. Heat and thermodynamics is my life. This is what we do at Caveman, is understanding the role that heat plays in your firearm and finding really cool ways to mitigate that or indicate that heat, because you should be aware of the role that plays in your shooting experience. And that's what all of our products do. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I was able to teach you something here today about heat in your firearm. And I hope you can see a way that the bacon wrap can be useful in whatever situation you need it for. I will leave it there. There's so much more I could go into, and I want to, but this video is already long enough already. So be sure to get your pre-orders in. Again, they are $30 right now. MSRP is $40, so get them for their launch price while they're 25% off. You can get those through our website, and they will ship out June 5th. As you know, if everything goes according to plan, which it looks like it is so far, though it's going to be a bit of a scramble. So Anyway, my name is Mike. This is Caveman, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks.